So all the successful people that you see implement this one thing which I'm going to mention in this video. So stick around. And it's something that I'm still having trouble implementing because it's not super easy, especially if you are not used to it. Actually, I'm not going to make you wait any longer. So basically is that you should work in cycles. So it basically means that you should have a certain like regime when you work super hard, when you push as hard as possible, you try to be as productive as possible, and then you have periods when you are relaxing, you are not working hard anymore, you have a bit less stricter diet, and that way you will keep like balance which will actually make you more productive. When you try to have balance which isn't or which doesn't stand on cycles, so that you have periods of when you are working hard and periods when you aren't, then you actually will drastically or not drastically, but you will eventually start dropping down, like your productivity levels will start dropping down. Because I have been working like this for a very long time and it only brought negatives. Because I was always trying to have a perfect diet, I was always trying to be productive, and I tried to keep this up for literally for whole years, for whole days, and so on. But it's not something you can keep up because I would always eventually burn out. And so you have to implement having like periods and cycles, because that way you will always be fresh, keep yourself going and have motivation. And so what you have to do is to have, I don't know, like 2 months when you work super hard, you wake up very early, you have strict diet. So the diet could be that you don't eat any sugars, you avoid any sort of milk, you don't eat carbs or only a little bit. By waking up early, I meant that you wake up, for example, at 3:30 or you wake up at 4, and you do that for that period of 2 months. You also avoid all the instant gratification, you avoid all wasting time basically. You try to be as efficient, as productive as possible. And then when you finish those 2 months, you have the period of, it could be 1 week, you can experiment with this, because for you 1 month of productive work could be a lot, or for somebody else having 3 months of productive work could be very little. So you have to experiment with this. Also 1 week of rest might not be enough for you, so as I mentioned, experiment. And so you would have, for example, that 1 week of rest, and in that rest you would do a bit of instant gratification, but also, of course, don't become degenerate. So having a milk in your diet once in a while throughout that week, or waking up a bit later, going to bed a bit later, watching movies, watching sometimes even useless videos, it's all fine because you have a rest week. But once your another cycle of hard work starts again after that 1 week of rest, then you have to focus as much as possible. And what I would recommend is that you watch a full guide which I made on deep work, because that way you will be even more productive when you implement it throughout your productive months. And so this like theory or this lesson basically stands on the fact that Earth literally works on minuses and pluses like all the time, on polar opposites or duality. We have day and night, that is duality. And like if you don't implement duality in your life, you can actually end up a bit worse, because as I mentioned, you can burn out. And I'm talking from my own experience, so try to have cycles. And if you currently have that productive cycle, you have to be as strict as possible, because if you try to have a bit of balance throughout that time, that like if you eat some sweets once in a while, then that can actually be much worse for you than if you have a strict diet, because you might think that it's much more difficult, which it actually is, to have a strict diet like that you don't eat any sort of sweets. But if you eat them, one thing can happen, and that is that you will end up eating more and more, and you will gradually end up being like you are when you don't have that working month, when you don't have that productive month or cycle. And so you should be as strict as possible. don't have like a rule that you can eat one sweet or one candy each day, because that can lead to you crave sugars even more, and you will eventually eat 10 sweets or 10 candies each day. So try to be as strict as possible, and that is very important lesson. I always wanted to hear this, because I always try to, or I was always thinking that having a balanced life is the way to go about it, but you should have it balanced, but in a way that you have a strict period of your life when you work super hard, and you have a period of life when you work, or when you work less and you are more relaxed with your diet and with all the habits that you do. So that is the lesson which I wanted to give you, and if you are interested, you can watch this video next.